Welcome to Garden Wise Adventures. My name is Malie. Today it's getting a little bit late, but I wanted to show you the plants that I'm going to plant for my food forest and maybe plant one or two of them before it gets dark. But before I show you how I plant them and show you what I bought, I want to talk a little bit about growing rare fruits. Now I live in Utah. I live in a zone 5B, 6, 7. There's a lot of debate about which zone this is. But the reality is we can have early freezes in the fall, sometimes as early as mid-October, and we can have late freezes like we had one last week, and this is almost the end of May. I've seen freezes and snow in June. Plus, we can get down below zero in the winter, but we haven't done that for about 6 years, but I've seen it happen and I've seen plants die because of it. So, when you look at the plants that I'm going to plant, you're going to probably look at them and say, what the heck do I think I am doing planting these plants? Because most of them are not plants you would expect to see in the state of Utah or zone 6 or so. Now the reason I am planting some of these plants is for plain fun and experiment. Now I used to belong in California to the California Rare Fruit Growers, and in Southern California, I lived in the Thousand Oaks area. In Southern California there's so many fun things that you can grow, but everybody in that group was trying to kind of stretch the boundaries of what could be grown. So when I moved to Utah, I was wondering what boundaries could be stretched here, what could be planted that nobody has really heard of, that nobody's really growing. And I found a bunch of wonderful plants that can grow here. And now I'm going to try to stretch a little bit further. Now, if you want to know a little bit more about what grows in Utah, I do have a Facebook group called Utah Rare Fruit Growers. Now, I pretty much restrict it to people who are growing in the state of Utah because I don't want comments that are going to make people sad, like from Southern California where they're going to be able to grow possibly their star fruit. Although that does get hit by freezes there too. So anyway, I try to restrict it to Utah, possibly even the Intermountain West where we have the same kind of growing conditions, so that we can be a group that experiments together. Now, with these plants that I'm going to show you that I'm going to plant, am I planting them being almost positive that I'm going to get them to survive? No. I am almost positive I will probably lose a lot of them at one point or another. But that's not what matters. What matters is we are trying to see what can grow. So let me show you what I'm going to experiment with here in the state of Utah. Now these are plants that I am really excited about. First one right here. To most people, zone like 8 and higher, this looks like a pretty normal plant. This is a pomegranate. But it's not any pomegranate, and it's actually got flowers on it. I think I got this from Planting Justice. Is this the one? No, I got it from Rolling something Nursery. I can't remember. Actually, I think it was Planting Justice. But anyway, this is a Kazaki pomegranate. It's a Russian pomegranate, and it should be hardy to zone 7. Now, as I've said, we're probably not really truly a zone 7 because we can get colder. So this little tree is going to need protection in the winter. So I will show you in a little bit later video how we're going to protect it. The next thing I have is one of the trees that I have in my front yard. This is a cutting started by a friend, and this is a Chicago hardy fig. Now I have one in the front that is coming back out of dormancy, that survived the winter, but it was heavily covered. So this is another one I'm going to need to cover. Figs, this is one of the hardier figs, and I've heard of people growing it here in the state of Utah uncovered over the winter, and it dies back to the ground. Then it throws up new shoots in the spring and summer and will fruit and sometimes have time to ripen. Well, I will probably cover them until they're a little bit older because I would really actually like to have figs that ripen. This is another tree that I'm really excited about. This is one of the hardy, hopefully hardy, we'll see what happens, one of the hardy persimmons. This is a Giro persimmon, and I will have to put it up on the screen. I did not do my research. I can't remember if it's an American or an Asian persimmon. But anyway, there are differences between Asian and American persimmons. But we've got some healthy growth on it. We do have some dead area that I'm going to, let's see if it's alive. Okay, if you can see where I've scratched, hopefully, yeah, it's brown. So that area is dead. But anyway, I'll cut off the dead areas and we'll plant this baby here. And this one, I'm not sure if I'll protect it or not. I know somebody who has grown a Giro persimmon, and his has lived a couple of years, and I don't think he's covered it. So we're going to try this one uncovered over the winter. Here we have another hardy fig. This is an improved Celeste. Supposed to be one of the more hardy figs. And this poor little baby has had a hard time. It's in a its roots are really having a hard time because they're really root bound. But it keeps putting out new growth and trying. So we're going to plant it here and it should be a lot happier. Now over here we have what looks like a dead stick. This is a pawpaw. Now I'll link some pawpaw videos up at the top. I've successfully grown one pawpaw here and had it fruit. It's still alive and very happy. This one looks dead, but I think what happened is it got desiccated by a storm that came through. It had probably 40, 50 mile an hour winds, and they were really cold winds, not freezing, but cold. So it definitely took this one back a bit. But you can see that it's still green, so I'm going to plant it and give it a chance. Hopefully it'll come back. This one right here is a sunflower, I think. Yes, it's a sunflower pawpaw. This one right here will need no winter coverage at all. It's extremely hardy in our area and grows really well. It's not, there's a lot of people who do grow these, and this is an Asian pear, and I think this one is a Shiro Asian pear, or Shinko. Yep, Shinko Asian pear. This tree is one of the ones that I'm going to let get taller and see if we can get some shade onto that pawpaw, because pawpaws really, they're understory trees and they do not like a lot of sun. Matter of fact, one of my next videos is going to be how to cover this pawpaw and protect it from the sun. Now those are the trees that I'm going to plant in this backyard. Let me show you a couple of the shrubs that I'm going to plant. The first one's going to be over here in this corner. I'm going to have to move it around a bit and see where we can put it because I'm at an angle. I'm going to put a garden bed like the ones I have up on the top of my hill here. Then right here is another bush. This is a bush, not a tree. This is a bush cherry. And I think this one, it says honeyberry on the thing, but that was my, I used a pot. I potted this up, I got it bare root. I think this one's Carmine Jewel. I have a Carmine Jewel and then I also have a Juliet. You need two so that they can get pollinated. So I have a Carmine Jewel and a Juliet, and I think this is the Carmine Jewel. And it got hit by the same storm, and it's starting to grow back. So we're going to give it a chance by putting it in the ground. Now over here, I have a very sad blue banana honeyberry. The leaves are crispy, got hit by the same storm. When you scratch at the bark, it's very green inside. Let's see if I can show you that. I don't know if you can see how green that is, but I read on their website that sometimes honeyberries, if they're stressed, will go dormant over the summer and flush back out over the fall. So I'm going to put this in the ground, give it some loving, tender care, and see if we can get it to come back out of dormancy. This is another honeyberry that I transplanted from the south side of my house because it was getting too much sun. Here it's going to get quite a bit of shade. This is an Aurora serviceberry. Let me go show you what I'm going to put into its spot. This one right here is a very special little baby. This is a cutting that I got from a friend. He just cut a branch right off the fig and gave it to me, and I was able to root it. And this is a Desert King. And I'm going to plant it right next to my Chicago Hardy that I was able to get to overwinter. As you can see, we're getting some good growth. We don't have a Breba crop, which is the first crop of figs on this yet. We probably won't get a Breba crop. We'll probably get the secondary fig crop, and I'm hoping it has time to ripen. So because this is my very special baby, let's have it be the first one that I plant. Now I'm not going to have to do too much digging because we already dug the serviceberry out of the spot. So I'm just going to dig down a little bit with my hand because the soil is still soft. Now generally speaking, I do not like to add fertilizer at time of planting, but since this is such a young tender fig and it's got just a few roots, I'm going to put a little bit of well-balanced fertilizer into the hole and mix it in. and just kind of try to give it a little bit of a head start. Let me show you the roots on this little guy. Be really gentle with those and just stick them in the ground. It's a little bit deep. We're going to make sure that we don't plant it any deeper than where it was in the pot. We may have to angle it a little bit because this is on a slope. Now I have my drip line right here that will just, oh, that's a rock right there. Let's see if we can get this. We have the drip line right there so it can get the water it needs. Let's pull the mulch back over the top. Make sure we haven't buried the stem there. And then we'll water it in. Now before I get to planting, I think I'm going to try and plant my big Asian pear. But before I plant, I wanted to talk to you a little bit about design. Now I am pretty picky about how things look. I really try to think about where I put them, how they're going to look, you know, from the street, from any different angle, you know, if it's going to have a pleasing look to it. Now I know food forests are supposed to be, you know, plainly utilitarian, where you have food and let everything kind of grow wild. And that's not necessarily my style. There will be a lot of plants in here, but it's going to hopefully look nice. I'm going to look at colors. We're going to plant flowers. We're going to plant some shrubs with color in them, and try to extend the color throughout the bloom season. We're also going to put a lot of pollinators in here. Now in another video, I'm going to talk about guilds. We've got a permaculture series going that I am still working on, but I'm going to tell you what I think about guilds. It's not exactly what a lot of people think in permaculture, but we'll talk about those. So anyway, let's show you what I'm going to do to plant this pear tree. So when I got this tree, it was bare root. It came with its roots completely out of the soil, and it was packed in plastic. So, and I think it had a little bit of sawdust around the roots. But I got this in February, and I knew I wasn't going to be able to plant it. So what I did is I put it in my large pot here. I put it in some good soil, and I don't know if it's really had time to root out very much. So what we're going to do is we're going to dig a good hole, and then I'm going to very gently try to take it out of the pot over the top of the hole so that we don't ruin any of the brand new roots that are growing. Now another reason I decided to plant this tree right here is that it won't block my paths. Now I've got a path that goes through here to my garden, and another one here that goes up into my garden that I take my wheelbarrow through. So I wanted to keep it out of those paths, but I also wanted it in an area where it would get full sun and cast a little bit of shade, but not shade on plants I don't want shaded. So I thought this would be the perfect area. So the first thing that I'm going to do is I'm going to move the mulch out of the way, because we don't plant plants in mulch. Now I made this area a little bit bigger so that I have a place to pile the soil, and I want the hole that I dig to be bigger than the pot that the tree is in. Now we'll see how easy this is to dig. I have about 4 inches of topsoil that I brought in. I did not bring in topsoil for the nutrition for the trees. I brought in topsoil so that I could plant annual plants into it. The soil that I have is almost pure rock. So it's going to be interesting when we get through the topsoil and the grass layer to see how hard it is going to be to dig this hole. We've pulled giant rocks out of these holes before. Now we've already hit impenetrable parts, so I'm bringing out my favorite tool, my little pickaxe, and this helps things go a lot quicker. So there's my layer of grass out. The topsoil is more brown. And then we've got the sand that the person who built this house brought in to plant the grass in. We have not hit the rocky layer yet, but I'll show you when we hit it. So I need to widen the hole a bit, but we've gotten down to the rocky clay layer. It's kind of hard to see. You can start seeing the rocks come up, and then it's just hard. There's going to be no more shovel digging. It goes all with the pick now. Okay, after a long time of digging, I am hoping that hole's deep enough. We're just gonna have to try it and see. Okay, we're gonna try and loosen the soil a little bit. I don't want to really have to tug to pull this tree out too much. So I don't want to rip the new roots. So we may have to try and dump it. It is getting looser. Okay, I hope this tree survives. As you can see, it did not root through the potting soil, but you can see little new roots that have grown. So I'm going to try and stand this up gently, not plant it too deep. See where the root flare is. These right here, adventitious roots, so they need to come off. There's the root flare through here. Okay, let me show you how it looks. Now you saw me compact around the edges. I did not step anywhere where the roots are. See where the base is starting to flare out a little bit? That's what's called the root flare, and you do not want to bury it any deeper than that. Another thing is, a lot of gardeners feel like they have to remove all the soil they dug out of the hole, but as you'll notice, all that soil went right back into the hole. The other thing is I did not mix any amendments or fertilizer in here. Trees do not need that. What you want to do for trees is have them search out in the soil, in the surrounding soil, for all of their nutrients. Now this tree's roots, and any tree's roots, will not go deeper than I planted them. Unless, oaks do have deep tap roots, but most trees, they root like under the top 18 inches of soil about. So there's going to be plenty of good soil for it to search for nutrients for. That's what trees do the best. If I amended this hole and put fertilizer in here, I'll make a very welcoming environment for the roots, which they'll just want to stay in this hole. So they'll circle around the hole kind of like they will in a pot. Another thing that happens if you add amendments is that you make two different soil types coming up against each other. And if you do that, you end up having water flow issues. Heavy compost will hold on to the water. If you have sand on the outside, it just won't soak into the sand, so the roots won't be able to go out and look for moisture. If you have clay soil outside of the potting soil or compost, you're going to have the compost dry out really quickly. So I spread the potting soil that was around the roots on the top and didn't mix it in. Now I'm definitely a hot mess. I'm sorry about that, but I wanted to close the video here. This is the way gardeners look after they've planted a tree and dug through clay that heavy. It took me probably at least a half an hour to dig that hole. But anyway, I'm not worried about the clay. I'm not worried about the rocks. Every tree you see in my yard has been planted into that soil and does beautifully. So I hope you've enjoyed this video. I challenge you to go out and plant a tree. Hopefully your soil isn't as hard as mine, and I hope you have a wonderful garden adventure.